essential concept that you need to understand, not only for self-building, but especially for health, is what we need in our life is more of the organizational principle. And the organizational principle necessarily has to be from a metaphysical point of origin. Because if it's physical, it's not organizing, it's disorganizing, it's falling apart. So we have to transcend the physical, transcend the immanent, to a point of, a source of energy that will allow the body and anything that it graces with its presence to move towards a greater state of order. Now remember, order finds room for everything. Oftentimes you see justice and mercy pitted against each other. And that's not a really accurate portrayal of the true state of affairs. Yes, mercy, when it's misapplied, is an injustice. Right? As Syed says in his famous poem, for those of you who speak Farsi, he says, "Tarahum bar palang tiz dandan, satamkari bovad bar gusfandan," which means that in a very bridged and crude form, kindness to wolves is cruelty to sheep. Right? So when you misappropriate even something like mercy and rahmah, you can do an injustice. Right? So it's like capturing someone like Saddam Hussein and then letting him go to be merciful. Well, guess what? Kindness to Saddam Hussein is cruelty to Shias and mankind in general. But it's important that in order for any value, any of the attributes of Allah that we strive towards representing and manifesting in our own characters and personalities, it's necessary that justice be applied to the full spectrum of these attributes every step of the way. Because mercy finds its correct place through justice. Meaning mercy needs justice more than justice needs mercy. Because when everything is put in its right place, then you've got justice, you've got mercy, and you've got the right amount of it. Right? So this is a very essential value for one to keep in mind. In fact, it is the name Al-Adl itself which invigorates the practical intellect with a criterion for which to organize our lives. Meaning, insofar as we're able to manifest different attributes of Allah in our lives in different facets, meaning as I'm looking at you, I'm exercising the name Al-Basir, right? As you're hearing me, you're exercising the name As-Samir. When you are, let's say, philosophizing, you're exercising the name Al-Hakim, right? So the criterion, every faculty, we have a faculty for every one of these attributes. So in other words, we have 98 faculties, though we oftentimes narrow it down to the 7, but 98 true faculties, meaning 99 minus Allah, which is the Ism Jami', which embraces all of the attributes. So we put that aside and we say 98 different faculties, 98 modes of consciousness that we're capable of. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam alayhi salam the names, what he did was he inspired Adam with the means to be cognizant of the essence of these, meaning he gave Adam the capacity to know and fully embody these names. Obviously he didn't hand him a list and say memorize. He gave him the capacity to really embody all of these names, meaning he's a true manifestation of these names. So insofar as we're able to be a manifestation of the name Al-Adl, we are able to, in fact, apply justice to whatever variables are in our mind at that point. Likewise, with the theoretical intellect. The theoretical intellect is our faculty of theoretical intellect. Our theoretical intellect is our manifestation of al-haq, right? Meaning the theoretical intellect measures truth, the practical intellect measures justice. And when we are faced with any given set of variables, the part of our mind, the part of our soul which compares those variables to the value that is instilled in us of al-haq or al-adl, it's insofar as we have a sound connection with those attributes, meaning insofar as we've purified ourselves and allowed these attributes to manifest through us, that we are able to put things in the right perspective, that we are able to refine our theoretical and practical intellects respectively. So you see, it is part and parcel. Without taqwa, your faculties, your mental faculties, your rational faculties will suffer for it. because it is through taqwa that we in fact import these attributes and the energy, the implicit organizational principle that is correspondent to each one into our lives. By means of purifying our connection with the source of these attributes, that is the Creator, we are able to in fact become manifestations of these attributes. How's my tempo so far? Am I going too fast, or I can take it down a notch? No? All right. If there's any problems, please feel free to, give me a nudge. So, so then you can see how it is this organizational principle, al-adl, which is not only necessary for us to actually do justice to any given situation, meaning when we're faced with a decision, shall I do X or shall I do Y? Our capacity to choose the better option relies on our connection with this name, al-adl, because it is that name that will put the variables in the right place, and hence we will recognize, oh, you see the light at that moment. By means of comparison, you are actually able to recognize which of the options is most in line, most harmonious with the application of perfect justice to that situation. So you need a sound connection with all of these attributes, and notably the one I'm emphasizing on today is al-adl, meaning that insofar as we are able to import this organizational principle to every level of our existence, our physical existence, and all the levels of our subtle bodies, insofar as we can establish a strong, sound, holistic connection with that point of origin, we are able to have perfect physical, emotional, mental, spiritual health. All right? Is that point crystal clear at this point? Okay. So, how does this all come about? So, the first thing to recognize here is that, okay, if you're saying that we have this connection, this spiritual connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is the mechanism by which we're actually able to utilize this? Right, so I'll try to go through this briefly just to sort of honor the people that were here last time, but again, for those of you who are new, it's really, I won't be doing you justice by just diving into the extension of last week's talk, or however many days ago it was, if I just leave these points unexplained. So I will recap for those of you that were here. I apologize if it's tedious, but I was requested to do a little review, so bear with me. So, a physical body, if you recall, we discussed Kirlian photography the last time. And Kirlian photography, what it is basically in the 1940s, a Russian scientist by the name of Semyon Kirlian, he discovered that when you place an electrode, you place organic material on that, organic material that is live or previously alive organic material, on top of that, and you place a film in between, and you run a high voltage, high frequency, low amperage electric current into that electrode. There is an exchange of ions between the electrode and that organic material, such that any ions that are exchanged between those two will leave a trace on the film that has been placed between them, so that we can actually see if there's going to be an ionic exchange between the electrode and just the physical part of that leaf, then we will see a perfectly aligned physical, basically, photograph, Kirlian photograph of the leaf. But if there's something more there besides just the physical leaf, then we will see signs of that, meaning there will be sort of an aura around that, what's known as the corona discharge. So it turns out that when you place a leaf, let's say, on top of the film, on top of the electrode, what we're left with is an aura. Right? And that aura is not damaged when you damage the actual physical leaf. Meaning if you cut the leaf in half, you still get a complete aura. Which means that there's something there that you can't see, right? Such that when you remove half the leaf, you still get an aura of a whole leaf. Right? So simply put, we can say there is actually some scientific evidence that there is more to us, or more to whatever we place on that, whatever we take a Kirlian photograph of, than just the flesh and blood. There's more to it than just the leaf. Now, something I don't believe I touched on last time was the role of holographic theory in all of this. Did I explain this? I don't believe I did. So I'll just touch on that. It's one of the things I had to sort of skip over in order to observe the time constraints. So basically, holographic theory, how holograms are made. If you pass a light through a very powerful light through a crystal, right, through quartz crystals. So far, science has established that the quartz crystal is the most structurally, geometrically consistent mineral that we know of. I mean, there is nothing that is more structurally consistent within its internal structure than a quartz crystal. That's why they're used for their various piezoelectric and what have you qualities in radios, watches, etc. When you pass a current through a crystal, it's very predictable. It's not an erratic fluctuation of energy that passes through. It organizes whatever passes through it. So when you pass light through a quartz crystal, what's generated is a laser beam, right? And what is the difference between the light in a laser beam and the light that's coming out of that bulb up there? Is that the light in the laser beam is what we refer to as coherent light, but the light coming from any old light bulb is incoherent light. The difference being that if you were to actually measure the wavelengths of the different rays of light that are coming out, you would see, putting photons aside, looking at the wave aspect of it, you would see that there are various different types of waves of light that are emerging from that source of light. Some are moving very quickly, some are moving more slowly, different amplitudes, different frequencies, etc. But coherent light, on the other hand, all of the waves of the light that emerges from a coherent light source are identical. They all carry the same wavelength. So it is the consistency and the reliability of the coherent light that gives it its special effects. Right? So it's why this cannot blast a hole through a wall and a laser beam can. Right? It's why laser beams are used for all kinds of things, surgeries and what have you, very precise operations, whereas obviously regular incoherent light doesn't possess the properties necessary to perform such procedures. Now when you pass this laser, of course a particular laser, all of that being modulated already, taken for granted, you pass that through a beam splitter. Let me just draw this part actually so it's clearly understood. So if you have a laser over here, you pass it through a beam splitter, right, or just for the sake of argument. So this will split the light into two forms now. So I'll move out of the way for you for a second. Then you have a reflection, and this... Have I done something to upset you, brother? No. You look very upset.
Why did you say that?
I don't know, you just look like you're scowling at me. You pass this now through a dispersion. Here you have an apple, right? Whatever object it is. So these lights are now so the laser's been split. They've now been diffused. This one is being diffused onto a type of film, special holographic film. So this is the female, meaning this is the untouched, and this is the male. This is providing information where this is providing a background matrix. Now it's not important all the specifics about it, but ultimately when this light comes into contact with the apple and is projected onto the film, so now you have this light forming one part of the matrix, you have this light forming the other part of the matrix. What's formed is a holographic image of the original apple. But what's different about a holographic image, as opposed to a regular photograph, is if you take this holographic image now and cut it into 50 different fragments. Can anyone tell me what's going to be different about each one of those fragments? Each one of those fragments will contain a perfectly preserved whole image, right? So truly, each part of this is a perfect microcosm of the macro, right? So the information contained in and of course you're not cutting it into any particular shape or whatever, it's just you take any fragment from the holograph, you pass it through the same light again so that you can actually view it, and you will have every particle contains the whole. That is a very unusual quality to be seen. Now what's interesting is if we can find the same quality elsewhere, if we can find, let's say, in the aura, a sign that the aura has been made of coherent light, then we will know that that light contained in the aura is going to have the same microcosmic properties than the holograph, right? Likewise, if we can find that, we can discover that each fragment of the light contained in a corona discharge in an aura, or an etheric body, or what have you, if you can find the same quality of the fragment containing the whole, then you will have discovered that that light is also coherent light, so it works both ways. Now, as it turns out, when you take a cut-in photograph of a leaf, you cut a hole in that leaf. What you see in the cut-in photograph of a leaf with a hole cut out is a leaf with a hole, with a leaf with a hole in it. And as you magnify each hole, you see more leaves with holes. So how is it that this leaf is actually, how is it that the information contained by the entire leaf is, you're getting a smaller image of the entire leaf within the hole. It's like a window into the, you know, like you've got a little baby leaf with the exact same information coded into it. In other words, we're seeing again here a microcosm, right, of the macro. Right, so a fragment of that energy, of that light energy, contains the information of the whole. In other words, we have good evidence to assume that since we don't know of another source of this sort of information coding, right, the perfect microcosm reflecting macrocosm, it's safe to assume, and it's not a very important assumption, because what's important is practically what information is contained in there. But it's safe to say that the light that generates whatever we like to term that corona discharge, the aura, I will henceforth refer to it as the etheric body, whatever is actually forming that etheric body, the light that is composed, the etheric body is composed of, is coherent light. Right? So here again, pay careful attention, this is another important point. We were talking about organizational principle before. You see how, remembering that remembering that we were talking about order and putting everything in its right place. Now we have reason to assume, we know that coherent light, what gives coherent light its properties, is the consistency of it. Now, if we're saying, so you have a regular light bulb over here, right, generating different frequencies, different, meaning light rays with differing amplitudes and what have you. When you have a laser, the light that's coming out of the laser is always the same frequency every time. Any light that is emitted from it is going to be consistent. Thank you. So if it is the consistency of the vibrations that endows coherent light with its particular properties, then there's some relationship between order and the source, the origin of those special properties. Right? You see how it is the orderliness of these vibrations that is giving it the advantage over this incoherent light. Right? So again, we're going back to that organizational principle, meaning insofar as this light is organized and orderly, it will possess these special properties that we're going to understand our reliance upon. All right? Is that point clear for everybody? Yeah. Okay. So we're just back to square one, basically. we've just shed some light on these, the first subtle body, which is organizing the physical body. And it's now, what I'm trying to get across is that at every step of the way, it's about the organizational principle. Right? Now, just to shed some more light on all of this. In Islamic metaphysics, we refer to different types of nafs, different types of souls, different subtle bodies, in other words. Now, it's your prerogative how you wish to imagine them, but I believe that this model that I will be presenting to you is a useful model for imagining it. It's not very important, the actual image that you have in your mind, but it's necessary for you to recognize that the soul is comprised of varying levels of consciousness, meaning there are parts of us which are purely physically interested. There are parts of us, there is a part of us, we'll term this part the etheric body, it's only interested in organizing the physical body, in protecting the physical body, in producing more physical bodies, right, and in basically sustaining the same body. So we refer to that as the etheric body. Now this is referred to in Islamic philosophy as, in the Arabic terminology, as the nafs nabati, meaning the plant soul. We have another level of consciousness which isn't so interested in the physical aspects. Right? There is a part of us which is interested in emotions, in imagination, in generating emotions from those images, in generating a type of motivation, pushing us forward. Right? This we refer to as the astral body. Or in Islamic philosophy, they also refer to it as the nafs haywani, right, the animal soul. Because as you can probably surmise, the plant soul, plants are not in need of an imagination, they're not in need of emotions, right? An animal that needs to move from point A to point B needs to be in possession of a motivating force. And so it is able to, based upon the introduction of images into its mind, into its imagination, it is able to be inspired by those images in order to move towards something, to aspire towards something, right? So when we are discussing the astral body, what we're discussing is the memory, we're discussing the imagination, we're discussing the source of our emotions. Yeah. You have a question?
No.
Okay. All right. Of course, now there are different ways we go about sort of proving these things in a rational, but the shortest way to sum all these proofs up is just to look at however you want to imagine it, right? I mean, I believe it's a very useful model to just think of them like Russian dolls that have layered around us. Right? We have the body physical. We have surrounding that what we saw in the Kirlian photograph. We have an etheric body. And beyond that, we have an astral body. And beyond that, we have a mental body. Beyond that, we have a causal body, which is actually timeless and spaceless, but just for the sake of argument, I'll portray it like that. So this is just a useful way of imagining it, but it's not essential. And we're not trying to say that it's the foundation. I'm sorry? The names? Okay. Yeah. Here we have, so the physical body. Then we have the etheric body. Then we have the astral body, the mental body, the causal body. Right? If you want like the Arabic terminology, we would term these nafs nabati, the plant soul, the nafs haywani, the animal soul, the nafs jinni, the jinn soul, and the nafs malakuti, jabaruti, or it's also the angelic soul. Meaning that each one of those souls, the term that we choose, refers to the creature of Allah that possesses that soul as its highest mode of consciousness. Meaning, plants don't go beyond the plant soul, animals, the animal soul, jinns, the jinn soul, and angels, the angelic soul. Okay, now that's just a model for understanding, but the content of what I'm about to explain is far more important than it's just a very useful way of referencing it in your mind. So, basically, each layer, we're talking about a different mode of consciousness that is getting more and more subtle. Okay, so we have the plant soul organizing the body, the astral body now, or the animal soul. which is motivating us, providing an emotional force to invigorate our behavior, to qualify our behavior with some type of palpable and satisfying goal. Then we have the mental body, right? So in the astral body, what we're talking about is the collection of images, sounds, right, that are contained in our imagination, aesthetic phenomena that are contained there and able to generate emotions from them. But our capacity then to manipulate those images, rearrange them, adjust them, create new things from them, relies on an even more subtle faculty. We refer to that as the mental body. Now, jinn are capable of that, right? And not to get too deep into jinn, but basically, it is by means of the rearrangement of these images that jinn are capable of free will. If they were not able to generate new images from images already contained in their imagination, they wouldn't be able to actually imagine doing something beyond the behavior of an animal functioning purely on instinct and never sort of straying from those preordained instincts. Jinn are able to do that. They qualify with free will accordingly. They're able to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whereas an animal is incapable of doing such, because an animal has the capacity to store images and generate, and is able to be motivated by those images, but those images they're not able to actually manipulate them, so they're only ever motivated by the same images that, in the way that Allah has ordained. But a jinn is able to rearrange these things, and so is able to be in possession of a type of free will. But it is something that is specific to human beings to contain the next level of consciousness with the presence of the inferior levels of consciousness we've just discussed. Right? So it is our capacity to exercise the qualities that are endowed to us by the causal body that actually separates us. And that is the reason why the jinn were made to prostrate before us. It is our capacity to understand rational concepts, ideas, abstract ideas that have no shape and form, that cannot be contained by imagination because they are not images. They are meanings, they are pure consciousness. Right? As I mentioned last, a few examples being the idea of justice, the idea of truth, the idea of honesty, of courage, of compassion. These aren't things you can draw pictures of. You can generate symbols for them. You can say, oh, this is scales, but you can't say the scales are justice. Right? Justice is a concept, and we embody that concept in our behavior, and we can become a just person. But justice itself is a concept. Right? So our capacity to understand, recognize, be cognizant of such a concept relies on a faculty which has a correspondent level of subtlety, right? Because once you're moving into the causal realm of being, you're moving out of the physical dimensions. Now you are at a level of understanding things that actually it abandons all modes of physicality altogether. It is your capacity to understand things of a metaphysical nature which very much dictates your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it very much dictates your capacity to organize your behavior according to the values that have been laid out for us by our Prophet and our Imams. So without a causal body, basically, without an aql, is what we're talking about at this level, without that capacity to understand abstract thoughts, we actually do not possess the capacity to be just in any sense of the word. Right? We can only mimic behavior. So there's a difference ultimately between a human being and a jinn in that regard. We're both given a certain prescription for living. Right? This is according to these rules, this fiqh, this akhlaq, etc. This is our worldview, this is our ideology. We're given these truths through our religion, but it is us that can understand the philosophy behind them, understand how everything ties in, how everything is integrated into a perfectly harmonious, holistic whole. If you're not doing that, if you're not striving for that level of consciousness, then it's not my place to say you are this or you are that, but one must be honest with themselves. If you want to move forward, it's necessary that you at least give yourself a proper assessment and a proper evaluation, and recognize the majority of people, 90 to 92% of our thoughts are of the mental, astral level. Right? Very few people operate at the causal level on a regular basis. It's just we're sort of tourists in that neighborhood. We go there and we quickly run back, right? And this is what we have in this hadith that I mentioned last time. There we have the essence of how to assess a mind. Right? In the hadith we have the Imam saying that you can recognize the minds by what the people in possession of those minds talk about. If you see a person constantly talking about people, he said, she said, right? This is a base mind. If you see a person only interested in events, right? The classic Asian uncle who just wants to give you every detail of history and demonstrate that he knows the difference between what happened in 1922 and 1923. We all have them, but we may know that phenomenon more than others. It's something that frustrated me to no end as a child. It's sort of like this test of memory. Who can remember more? It's very much an ego thing, but nonetheless. It is that mind that is the common mind. Right? The only interest in events. Right? Not he said, she said, but this happened, that happened. But it is the lofty mind which talks about ideas and concepts. Right? And you see how this ties in here. Right? When we're talking about, the mind is only interested in talking about he said and she said, the gossiping mind, the gossiping person. That is the mind that is at the very low level, end of the astral realm, the astral body, right? Which ties into the astral realm, but we'll talk about that in a second. As you move up, you see now there's a beginning, there's a borderline abstraction where you have a person who's now interested in not just the sort of mundane affairs that go on between himself or herself and other people, but they're actually looking at events that sort of paint the picture of history. But when you move beyond that, you're moving now into the causal realm, you're moving into that level of consciousness that will separate you as a lofty mind and a person who's actually embraced their humanity. The part of you that gave you the status above the jinn, right? That is the part which is giving you the status as a person in possession of a lofty mind. Right? So it's no surprise that if you're not exercising that faculty, if you're not even interested in sort of catalyzing the growth of that faculty, then you are at a loss. Right? Because it is the aql that is the inner prophet. Right? You cannot describe something as an inner prophet unless it possesses some level of asma, of infallibility. And in fact, the aql, when it is functioning in isolation, that is an infallible faculty. Right? Logic is the science which protects us from errors when using that faculty. And philosophy is the application of that faculty, hopefully in an unerring capacity, to as many abstract realities as possible. In fact, the sort of the maxim of the ancient philosophers in Arabic was Sayruratul insan aliman aqliyan mudahiyan lil alim al ayni. Right? Yeah, Sayruratul insan. Yeah. So what it is, it translated, Sayruratul insan, it is a transformation, the metamorphosis of a human being, aliman aqliyan, meaning into a rational universe, mudahiyan lil alim al ayni, meaning that is a perfect reflection, it is an abstract reflection of the physical universe. So when you contain the abstracted physical universe in your mind, you are the perfect philosopher, right? And that is when you have embraced that faculty which gives you that humane advantage over all other creation, and actually makes you worth that prostration that Iblis had such a difficulty with. Right? Because if you're not, then actually Iblis doesn't need to prostrate before you, because you are stuck at a level equal to or below him. Right? In fact, if you are the common mind, you have to prostrate before him. Not the common, but the base mind, right? So, tell all the gossipers out there that bow to their Lord. Because quite honestly, it's not Allah that invites us to gossip, it is Iblis, so they are bowing to their Lord, really. Each one of us has a different idol, right? It's all about picking the right one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, when we want to make, so this is sort of the practical end of the stick, right? That what it translates to when you are resonating at these different frequencies, what your status is in the eyes of Allah and the eyes of the Ahlul Bayt, right? It's clear, right? So it's from a practical aspect, because I don't want it to be all theory, but something you can walk away with is a sort of an objective to, meaning you might find yourself now motivated to regularly assess yourself, to see, well, what percentage of my conversation today, how much did I spend talking about people, right? Mundane affairs that are evaporating as we speak. How much did I talk about events, right? Or you can be the one who abstracts the meaning from those two subject matters. Meaning, if you saw such and such person doing whatever they did, you extract the meaning from it. You extract, let's say, a psychological truth, right? Oh, humanity acts like such and such in such and such situation. There is an abstract route into every phenomenon that you encounter in your life. So, really, it's just all about getting the right perspective. It's not about changing your clothes altogether. It's just about wearing your clothes properly. These are the things you encounter in your daily living, but if you can get the right perspective, have the right attitude towards it, take the right thing out of it, then you are, in fact, a practical philosopher, right? And you are exercising that level of your consciousness which has qualified you as a human being. And it is through that faculty that you are capable of applying justice to your life. So really what you're doing is you are exercising that part of yourself which predisposes you to be a person with taqwa. Right? And you all know from the, would anyone like to quote the verse? Who are the best amongst you in the Quran? Right? Who are the people who have the highest status? When Allah says, if you want to know who's superior to another, you're not looking at color of skin, you're not looking at body weight, you're not looking at, who you're related to, you're looking at what? Right? Atqakum, right? The most pious of you, the ones of you who have understood Islam in such a way that it has become a practical reality for you. You're able to put things in the right perspective in every situation and aim for that highest good, right? So Imam Ali alayhi salam, he describes this person, right? I'll write this down actually, because this is a hadith that's so, I overquote it, I'm not ashamed of that. But it's such a vital hadith, and I don't think there is a hadith that I love more than that one. And I think it's one worth committing to memory for those of you who've got some working knowledge of Arabic.
I'm sorry they don't work very well.
It's all right.
Slightly down here. If there's a hadith worth memorizing, in my opinion, this is definitely one of them. ليس العاقل من يعرف الخير من الشر ولكن العاقل من يعرف خير الشرين. Anyone like to translate, or should I? The intelligent person is not the one who recognizes the difference between good and evil. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry idiot can do that, right? Poison water. That is a great question of life. Which is better for your health? Poison or water? Everybody knows. Halal and haram, it's an easy distinction. وَلَكِنَّ الْعَاقِلَ مَنْ يَعْرَفَ خَيْرَ الشَّرَّيْنِ. But the intelligent person is the one who's able to recognize the better of the two evils. Right? So it's not a black and white world. There are shades of grey. And the one who's able to pick up on which of those is the darker, which one of those is the lighter, that is the person who ultimately deserves the very highly esteemed status of an aql, of an intelligent person. Remember, aql is poorly translated as intellect. Right? Aql is an intelligent person.
And remember that we have our own vocabulary as Muslims, right? Meaning we shouldn't just assume, just naturally take on the definitions that have been handed to us by colloquial, from the colloquial vocabulary. Right? Intelligence in Islam, the concept of aql, is a very beautiful concept. And if we teach our children to aspire to that concept, we'll be raising a very different generation to the ones that have preceded us. Right? If you look across the board, you'll see many different definitions of intelligence throughout different cultures, and each one will then, the children aspire to something and they develop into very different adults. For instance, the Chichewa people of Zambia, I believe, they have a word, Nzelu. And when they say Nzelu, it doesn't just mean, it means intelligent, roughly translated, but to be an intelligent person, to be in possession of Nzelu amongst these Chichewa people, you have to be eloquent in your speech, you have to be just in your behavior, right? And you have to be quick-minded, quick-witted. Right? It's not just about having lots of stored information in your head. Anyway, I've made a lot of points here, but I wanted to bring something practical into it. But moving back to our point, because I only actually have about 6 minutes left, the premise of what we were trying to say last time was that at every level of consciousness, we have the need for order. And it is our capacity to import that order into our lives, which will ultimately endow us with better or worse health. Just an example of how this order actually translates into something. Reiki healers were invited in a university in Los Altos, California, by a research scientist, Dr. Justice Smith. And what she did was set up two groups. You had non-healers and healers. She handed them test tubes with different enzymes in them. Now, nobody but the experimenters knew, the double-blind study basically, nobody knew what was in those test tubes, etc. And what happened was, they were asked to hold the test tubes in their hands to control the experiment for body heat. So the non-healers, their bodies are warm like the healers, but they don't possess an active ability to channel this healing energy. And they discovered that body heat was not enough, that it was only the test tubes, the enzymes contained in the test tubes of the experimental group, that is the healers, that actually had enzymes increasing their reaction rate in a linear fashion over time. Whereas the other group, right, there was no change. Now, that was in the case of most enzymes, notably trypsin, which is in our stomach. The faster it works, the faster your food gets digested, the smoother your digestion process is as a whole. However, when they put NADase, which is one of these enzymes that breaks down certain participants in the Krebs cycle, in the mitochondria of our cells, NADase is responsible, as it turns out, they discovered later, for breaking down, for catabolizing things that are needed in order to generate energy. Right? So, meaning it's just like monoamine oxidase. We have, Allah's put in our body enzymes which break down those neurotransmitters that make us feel good. It is a necessary part of our metabolism, but the more monoamine oxidase that you have, the more of a novelty seeker you will be. The less satisfied in life in general you'll be. They've actually established now a correlation between novelty seeking in our society and levels and genes that predispose us to higher levels of monoamine oxidase. Right? So that's why I'm such a big advocate of dopamine. Because dopamine, phenylalanine, all these feel-good neurotransmitters, they are actually what's standing between us and contentment. Meaning, obviously, it's a spiritual way of life and what have you, but our ability to generate these neurotransmitters is making the difference between how much we're running after something out there and how much we're satisfied with what we can find in here, in our daily lives. But nonetheless, so NADase is such an enzyme, meaning it breaks down something that we need in order to be healthier. So what they discovered was the healer treated test tubes with those enzymes, that NADase contained inside, started decreasing their reaction rate over time. They actually at that time did not know what the role of NADase was, these particular experimenters. They discovered afterwards when they were stumped on this, why is it that some enzymes speed up and some enzymes slow down? Right? So it turns out you speed this enzyme up, you feel happier, you have more energy, you're healthier. You slow this one down, you're happier, you have more energy, etc. So what we take away from that is that this organizational principle, this energy that we're channeling effectively in Reiki, in other healing modalities, therapeutic touch and what have you, is what you're channeling is an energy that possesses the intelligence of the organizational principle. It knows exactly which enzymes to speed up, which enzymes to slow down. How does it know that? We go back to the holographic theory. The microcosm contains the macrocosm. In this energy, the only way one could explain that the energy knows what to do in different situations, it's not just a sort of blind, one-dimensional effect. Just, like magnetic energy, that is dense magnetic energy generated by magnets, has one effect, right? It's monopolarized. It only knows how to do one thing, whatever you put in front of it. But this energy is intelligent. It knows how to put everything in the right place. So it is actually endowed with the attribute of Allah, al-adl. Right? It is endowed with a faculty of a level of consciousness which gives it the ability to bring about justice, harmony, order, in whatever situation you apply it to. Right? So you see how it is necessary for there to be an interconnection in the energy that invigorates us at the metaphysical level. Meaning, insofar as this energy is connected to the whole, it contains information of the whole. Only if it contains that information would it know how to affect each and every different enzyme. Now we're just looking at enzymes here. We have to expand that now and say we're not just talking about the physical body, we're talking about the etheric body, we're talking about the those parts of us which comprise our emotional body, the astral body, the mental body, the causal body. So you see, as you import order to every level of consciousness, what you are doing is providing the means for your superior levels of soul to inspire the inferior levels of soul to be more orderly. The organizational principle, wherever it goes, it blesses the scenario with order, with a greater level of order. So if you apply that order to the causal body, you'll have a more orderly, rational capacity for understanding, a more orderly aql, more orderly intellect, theoretical, practical, or otherwise. Now that, if that is now affected, meaning it is now endowed with a higher level of order and perfection, it's capable of giving to the lower level, because you can't give what you don't have. If this lacks order, it cannot give order to the lower level, right? So as you go down from rational, right, to the imagination, the emotions, and now the physical, every level of being, physical, emotional, or spiritual, or mental, or whatever terms you want to use, anything that affects you in your life, every single one of your faculties, every mode of consciousness that you're capable of, relies on the organizational principle. So it is the expedient approach that Islam blesses us with, that through the proper akhlaq, we are organizing those higher levels. Islam gives us the right worldview. It gives us an awareness of what is real and what is not real, meaning the manifestation of Allah, al-haq, the theoretical intellect. When you have a sound theoretical intellect, you will be able to abide by a sound practical intellect, meaning the proper worldview, right, or Weltanschauung, as you oftentimes hear, it's not just a German word, they use it in English too. Proper Weltanschauung inspires us with a proper ideology, right? So insofar as you are able to recognize what is and what isn't, you are able to recognize what should and what shouldn't, right? If I know that you've done me a favor, then it is befitting for me to return the favor the first opportunity I get. So, is it or is it not true that you've done me a favor? We say yes, that is one of the statements that we qualify as true. And so is it or is it not right for me to return the favor when I have an opportunity? Yes, that is a statement we qualify as right. So you see how the truth, our understanding, holistic understanding with truth, facilitates a holistic understanding of justice, of right and wrong, right? And every inferior faculty then benefits from that. So Islam benefits us by giving us a proper worldview. Tells us what's real and what isn't real. Then we're able to derive from that an understanding of the proper ideology. What we should do and what we shouldn't do, what's right and what's wrong, what's good and what's evil, right? And from that we're able to derive every inferior part of ourself will derive its own correspondent level of organization. So once our rational levels are as orderly as they can be, we are now putting ourselves in the best situation for our emotional faculties to be benefited by that, right? Because these will organize each lower octave, right, on this harmony, of this potentially harmonious sort of flux of energy, of consciousness that is us. Remember, consciousness is the most democratic currency that we have available in this universe. Everybody has access to consciousness. It is the means of the most ecstatic states of reverie and being and pleasure that you have available. It's insofar as you are able to be conscious of a thing that you are able to enjoy a thing. Right? So as you elevate your consciousness, as you apply justice to consciousness, you put every part of your consciousness, every one of your faculties in its right place, every other one of your inferior faculties will then follow suit. So in a much cruder way, I will just say, a sound mind will give rise to a sound emotion, right? Or a sound emotional being. And sound emotions will then give rise to a sound body. So the best way to go about governing your life so that you can be as happy and efficient as possible is to understand this, right? What we're talking here is very much theoretical intellect, practical intellect, right? We're at the level of worldview here. That's the first layer of what has to come in health. So when you can actually absorb that and implement it in your life on a regular basis, right? Why is it that an hour of contemplation is worth 70 of worship, right? So again, now keeping with that, putting everything in the right perspective, Islam is advocating, Ali Islam is advocating over here. The intelligent person is the one who's able to recognize the lesser of two evils. Okay? Meaning, you can't be doing everything at once. Everything you do is, in essence, from one perspective, an evil because it's distracting you from something else. So, am I going to spend all night on the praying carpet, right, or am I going to spend all night in contemplation? Right? If every one of those hours spent in contemplation is going to give me 70 years of the praying carpet, then what rational man, pardon me for saying so, but gets up in a speech and goes and prays when there's something useful to be benefited from it? Right? I'm not making that as an attack on anyone who did so last time. I'm just trying to encourage you. I don't take things personally, honestly. I don't. I'm just trying to encourage you to recognize that in your daily living, when you are qualifying your options and trying to recognize, yes, I can't do everything at once, but the things that I can do, which of them should I be doing, right? And so when you can apply this justice throughout, these are all just different examples of the application of justice to different scenarios, meaning choosing the lesser of the two evils, etc. It is the organizational principle that qualifies every part of that with virtue. If there is virtue to be found in a human being, it is insofar as that human being has been successfully applying the organizational principle to the mode of consciousness that they're engaged in at any point in time. Is that clearly understood? So your health relies upon the application of that organizational principle. And so just to now touch on the point that was sort of left hanging last time, and I think creates some hard feelings, about this idea of genetic responsibility. Now let's place the situation in that dichotomy here, right? Either this or that. One of them has to be true, right? You can't be and not be at the same time. So, hence the dichotomy. Is this true or is that true? Now, our first dichotomy here, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inflict us with diseases in a random fashion? Do you lose the lottery when you get your hereditary disease? Right? You're born with autism. Did God just say, I'm just going to pick a random disease and throw it in this guy's direction? If you believe God functions in a random fashion, then you really need to get to know God a little better. Right? There's nothing random about God. God is the most, if quartz is consistent, you better be sure that the God who created quartz is even more consistent and is even more reliable. Right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He does something, He does so for very good reasons. And it is very structured, and there are 1,000 supporting variables that qualify any one of God's acts as a rational and sound and virtuous act. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you see that there is a disease manifesting in a particular group of people, right? Allah says in the Quran, what does He say? لَا يُغَيِّرُ اللَّهُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah doesn't change the condition of a people until they change themselves. Why is it so difficult to understand that we are responsible for physical problems? If Allah, the first thing that we take that usually is politically, right? The Germans have a similar saying along those lines. It's something that, like, sort of tenacity will tell us, common sense will tell us. It's sort of like a proverbial wisdom, if you will, that we've known throughout the ages. People get the government they deserve. Imam Ali alayhi salam said the same thing when he cursed the people of Basra and Kufa, right? After me, you will be inflicted with an oppressor, right? You will not, and oppressor governments for as long as you are who you are, basically. As long as the people of Iraq have been in this situation, have been in that mentality, they've been inflicted with the ruler that corresponds with that. Right? It's not a curse that Imam Ali threw at them out of vindictiveness or malice. Basically, when Allah said, when you have Imam Ali saying "La'an Allah," what he's saying is, in fact, it's a declarative statement, right? It's not an exclamatory statement. It's not a request. Allah, please, these guys were destined for good things, make them destined for bad things. Right? That's not Imam Ali. That's not his style. Imam Ali, when he's saying "La'an Allah," he's saying that these people have afforded themselves a very rough time. They have pushed themselves away from God's mercy. So he is describing them, not cursing them in essence. Right? So when we curse certain enemies of the Ahlul Bayt, what you're actually declaring something. You're not invoking something. Right? You are saying that those who take up arms against the Ahlul Bayt and those who have chosen to attempt to extinguish the message of the Ahlul Bayt are those who have distanced themselves by merit of their own behavior from Allah's mercy. So you see how, to curse doesn't take the same meaning that we traditionally sort of embrace. So basically, it's not a draw, it's not a lottery. You're not born with a random disease. Right? Allah doesn't change your condition until you change yourself. It is not an irrational idea to assume that your children will pay the price. Where did they get their body from? You cannot give a strong body, if you have a weak body. You cannot give what you don't have. I can't give you $500 if I only have $50. It's simple as that. The organizational principle that I have imported into me, I can give to my child. He will inherit the amount of organizational principle that I have made a reality in my life, and not more than that. Allah doesn't give things when they're not deserved, right? Allah, yes, I won't get into that, but nonetheless, the point I'm trying to make is, if there are any questions, I just want you to understand that the rationale behind this way of thinking, that you've all heard of hereditary diseases before, surely, right? That there are higher probabilities of inheriting schizophrenia, let's say, if a parent has schizophrenia, or autism, if a parent has autism, or what have you, right? And so if you understand this concept of the organizational principle, then you understand that at that moment when a child is conceived, how much of that organizational principle is active inside your character, inside your personality, inside your body, right? That is what is determining the organizational principle that you're able to bestow on your progeny, right? And so it's not an irrational sort of exuberant idea that we would assume that, yes, if you don't address certain issues, if you don't learn certain lessons, a lesson, an unlearned lesson, meaning is a sort of failure to import the organizational principle into that part of the soul, that area of our understanding. If I don't get it, that my akhlaq is wrong in this certain circumstance, right? If as a people, let's say we have a certain nation, let's say in Iran, it is a common thing that if you see somebody looking at a woman, right, you feel very justified to go backbite about that person. Right? The first thing you do, whisper, right? Like, look at this guy over there, looking at these women he's not married to. Right? Has he committed adultery yet? No, but you've done something worse than adultery. But this isn't a lesson that they're ready to learn yet, because it's something that they keep alive. And it's a part of the culture. Have you learned the lesson yet that it's better to tell the truth, right, than to lie your way into a situation where you look friendlier than you really are? Ta'aruf, right? Come into my house when I don't want you to come into my house, right? These are just perpetual cultural lies. But if you don't learn that lesson, then guess what? You will see this particular culture has certain diseases that are associated with it. Every culture that you look at has there's certain things that tend to be common amongst those people. And it's not just random. If you see Germans, that they tend to have a particular type of health problem. You see Khorjas tend to have a particular group of health problems. Right? You see every sort of different ethnic group has its own problems because they have their own mentality. They have certain lessons that they have learned and certain lessons that they haven't learned. And so there are parts of themselves which have not been blessed with the organizational principle. So it is not a ridiculous idea to assume that their children, until they learn those lessons, their soul will also be lacking. Their souls will also be lacking in the organizational principle necessary to prevent that disorder in the body. Right? So you see how the flow, we move from the higher levels of consciousness to the lower levels, and the more orderly you are up there, the more orderly you can be down here. Right? And so the mu'min is a happy person. The mu'min is a cheerful person. Because the mu'min will be healthy. As-sihhatu afdalun ni'am. Why is it Imam Ali has made this point that the health is the best of the bounties? It says in the Quran, make sure you get your share of the bounties of the dunya. Because by means of those bounties, you will have the means to achieve the bounties of the hereafter. Meaning, if you don't have high expectations and high standards of discipline, conduct, and lifestyle habits in order to inspire a higher level of health, then it is my pleasure to tell you that you don't have the right to expect. You have to lower your expectations in the hereafter. When Allah introduces a formula, you better take that formula seriously. If He says that you better take advantage of those bounties that are available to you and are halal for you in the dunya, because they will help you with those in the akhirah, you better believe that if you don't take your health seriously, you are putting your eternal state of affairs at risk. Right? So health is very integral. A person who has energy, is a happy person. Because whatever they want to do, they have the means to do it. What's there to be grumpy about? Wherever they're in a situation where they lack something, they have the energy to adjust, to adapt. It's when you're deflated. Depressed, in fact, means lacking in energy. Low energy is the trademark, the hallmark sign of a depressed person. Right? There's not 100% sort of correspondence there, but nonetheless, you don't find energetic depressed people. Jumping around, I'm floating through life. I'm so depressed. It doesn't happen, right? The energy, when you see a lack in energy, you tend to see a lack of happiness as well, right? You tend to see there's something in Farsi when you see someone who's just like sort of dragging themselves. They right? They say, what? You've been punctured. It's like you've had your tires flattened. You're just going through life on a flat tire, right? So you put the life there, you put the organizational principle there, then you have an energetic person. And what they want to achieve, right? Why is a person nasty? Right? According to the hadith that I narrated last time, مَا مِنَ رَجُلٍ تَكَبَّرَ أَوْ تَجَبَّرَ إِلَّا لِذِلَّةٍ وَجَدَهَا فِي نَفْسِهِ. No man, or woman, is arrogant or oppressive to another human being, save for the baseness and the depravity that he sees in his own self. Now, if I can compensate for that depravity, if I can now rebuild myself up from this inferiority complex, then I won't develop this superiority complex. Right? Basically, the formula here is every superiority complex, every time you see someone being, confident in that arrogant, sort of overly assertive way, you know that's because they're actually very insecure. Right? So nobody pushes anybody around, nobody hypes themselves up, nobody talks down to other people, dictates terms to other people as to what you should do and what you should be. Right, in that arrogant sense, save because they are trying to hide something. And if you see it, they're jumping the gun on that basically by trying to put other people down to make themselves feel good. Right? It's why the backbiter backbites. If you can point the finger enough in the other direction, people won't look at you. Right? So if you have the energy, and if you are a happy person, on account of being energetic and being able to embrace every situation with a well of energy, then why would you ever be nasty to anybody? Right? If you are not lacking in that department, if you're not lacking in the happiness department, happy people want to spread the happiness. It's unhappy people that want to take your happiness away when they see it. What's envy all about? Envy is I don't have something, you have something, I can't have something, so neither should you. Right? But if you have it, if you have the energy and you're full of life, and you are a person that has true mental, emotional, physical vitality, all you want to do is give it to other people because you want to see, you don't want people dragging you down, right? Even if it's just a selfish motivation, you want other people to be up there with you. It feels good to spread that love, to spread that energy, right? It's contagious, those kind of vibes, right? So you see, it's very integral. It's sidelined, it's marginalized. It's not something you hear about health, You got the Maulana with this massive stomach, right? Well, I mean, obviously he's not going to be like, you guys have to be healthy. It can't be like that. You have to remember that Our Imams, our prophets, they were perfectly healthy people. The reason, Imam Zaman alayhi salam, he's not the exception to the rule, except for the fact that nobody has had the opportunity to interrupt his long life. Any of the Imams that was given the opportunity to live out their life in full health, they would have lived as long as Imam Zaman is alayhi salam today. Right? It is only because someone put an end to that physically through poison, with a blade or whatever, that the Imams and the prophets were taken from us. Because otherwise, a perfectly functioning body will always, right, the constitution will stay in check and stay in balance, and it will continue. So, I've overdone it again, but...
No, on time.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Questions, if anyone has any. Dare you accuse me of not covering something? No, seriously, I'm happy to answer your questions. So please, the more the merrier. Husn su'al nisful ilm, Imam Hassan alayhi salam said. Intelligent questions are half of knowledge.
You know there's certain times in the year where it's cruel to eat some foods, some fish. What can you just shed a little bit light on?
Okay. We need to look at, temporarily look at astrology. Right, now very briefly, the Islamic concept of astrology, I might remind you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Buruj swears by the Buruj, وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ, by the heavens endowed with their stations, there are 12 stations. If you look amongst the Mufassirin, they're unanimous in their corresponding those Buruj that Allah is referring to with the 12 zodiacs. Zodiacs, what they represent are 30-degree angles relative, the Earth relative to the rest of space. If you put a planet in any one of those 30-degree angles, depending on which of those 30-degree angles or which of those zodiacs that planet finds itself, it will have a different effect on you. Right? So when it's, let's say, to the west, right, when it's at 90 degrees, it will affect you very different to when it's at 72 degrees, let's say, or whatever the situation. It is a, meaning every portion of the horizon is a different window to which the heavenly bodies can affect us. Now, what are the heavenly bodies? What you're looking at when you're looking at planets, what am I looking at when I'm looking at you? I'm looking at a body that is animated and organized by a soul. If you see the earth being referred to, being personified in hadith, the earth will swallow this, the earth will torment that. Don't tread arrogantly upon the earth, because the earth will be waiting for you in the grave, and it'll be there to crush you, right? So think of it then. Remember, this is a spiritual crushing, right? Nonetheless. So remember that the Imams do not talk in vain. When they personify the earth, it's because they believe the earth, they know the earth to be in possession of a personality. You can't personify that which lacks a personality, right? A personality is dictated by the attributes that personality is concerned with, right? So the earth is organized according to the organizational principle which is brought to it by the soul that organizes it. Just like we are animated by our souls, the earth and all the other planets are animated by their souls, right? This concept of Gaia you may have heard of, like the living earth. Now, this is what we're talking about here. It's the earth is just a big body with, pimples erupting as volcanoes, or, cracked skin appearing as earthquakes, or, tsunamis as, I don't know, the sweating, yeah. Moving cellulite. However you want to see it, right? What we have here is a live body that that relies on the organizational principle. When you have microbes living on a body, we have good bacteria, we have bad bacteria in our body. We have Lactobacillus acidophilus, which will improve our digestion, generate vitamins, suppress the monoamine oxidase, increase our neurotransmitters, the feel-good ones, and make us actually feel happier when you've got healthy intestinal flora. On the other hand, the candida albicans, right, the yeast, the fungus that's in you, right, what's that generating? Acidity, oxygen-compromising metabolites, right, which are compromising your oxygen levels and hence reducing the capacity of each individual cell, which when properly oxygen saturated can generate 12 times the amount of energy when in the contrary condition. So basically what Candida is doing is serving as that microbe which is compromising your health. Now, our bodies are sort of just a case in point. On this earth, we have some human beings that are good bacteria, right? And we have some human beings that are fungus, right? And not essentially so. We don't judge people's essences. Allah says, I love my creatures, I just don't like some of their behavior, some of their actions. Right? So likewise, our model, the model that I encourage people to have is the same. It's not really discussed, but what's Islam's answer to judgmentalism? Right? We say, yes, we are judgmental, but we're only behaviorally judgmental. We judge people's behavior, but not their essence, because only Allah knows what lies in their hearts. So if you get any of that Western rhetoric, don't be judgmental, you know what to answer. Because you can't live without judgments. But nonetheless, when we're looking at human beings, we see some of them create acidity in this world, and some of us can create a more positive vibration in this world. Some of us are bringing more of that organizational principle, and this has actually been discussed by some of the ulama, that the lowering, because of a lowering population of insan, the perfect human beings, insan kamil, because we have a lower number of these nas al-kamila, what we're actually dealing with nowadays is more natural disasters. Because it is the human beings, the perfect human beings, which ground that organizational principle in the energy field of the earth. Right? It's the same microbial principle we're talking about when we're comparing Lactobacillus acidophilus to Candida albicans. We're talking about good bacteria creating something good, a wide variety, wide spectrum of positive effects. On the other hand, we're talking about the fungus creating something bad, creating acidic conditions which compromise health. Right? So like it is, why is it that we will see certain events taking place? Is it again a random thing? An earthquake over there, a volcano over there, it's just a random thing? Or is there a change in the energetic matrix in the earth? Is it a matter of an eruption on account of of disease-bringing microbes? Right? Good bacteria helping to keep the earth healthy, to preserve. Why is it that when you recite certain surahs, Allah says, I'll save you from dying in an earthquake, for instance? Right? There's got to be a relationship between vibration, right, and certain events, natural disasters. Will you be in a situation where you'll be affected by this? No, your vibration will protect you from it. Right? You are not resonating with the vibration of such a natural disaster, and hence you won't be a part of it. Right? When it goes back to vibration, then you understand polarity. When you understand polarity, you understand the relationship between us and life events. That you are experience magnets. Every human being is attracting certain experiences to themselves by merit of the sum of your parts generating a particular vibrational signature. If you know the vibrational signature of a person, you know the metal of what they are made of. Meaning you know now the sum of their parts. Where is their causal body resonating at? Where is their astral body resonating at? How much that organizational principle have they made the effort to import into their lives? You'll see a vibrational signature which is either up here, lactobacillus, or down there, fungus. Right? And then you will see what that person's contribution is to the earth. Because the soul that is affected by it, by the human beings, will generate different, again, it's not random. So to get back to your question, each planet has a soul, each day has a particular relationship with a particular planet. Right? And the nomenclature doesn't defy that either. Right? We have Monday, the moon, Sunday, the sun. Of course, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, these are all, they took the jump to the Germanic mythology. Right? Tuesday coming from Tus, who is basically the god of Mars, meaning the angel. Because remember, when we see people like Plato and Aristotle referring to these mythological creatures, they're actually referring to them as angels, not gods. They refer to the creator God, right, and the subservient gods and goddesses. What they mean by gods and goddesses are angels with either primarily Jamali nature or angels with a primarily Jalali nature. Right? Some of these angels are concerned with attributes which have more of a masculine or a yin, or rather yang personality, right, a character. Or there are some, let's say Venus, for instance, which is concerned more with those attributes that are more of a Jamali nature, more of a yin nature, more of a feminine nature. Right? So a god or a goddess, we're talking about either the soul that animates a planet being either of the masculine or the feminine type. Right? And they make a very clear distinction. If you read Timaeus by Plato, he makes clear that we have a creator, the god capital G, and we have gods and goddesses lower capital G. Let's not get stuck with the nomenclature. Let's embrace it for what it's worth. We know we have angels, some of them in sajda, some of them in ruku. What gives? If angels don't have bodies, then how are they here or there? They're resonating at different frequencies. They are interested in different attributes of Allah, and hence they by merit of our connection with them, they inspire us with different types of motivation. Why are Capricorns interested in X, Cancers interested in Y? Right? Why are Leos better than all the rest of you? Right? Because we are interested in certain things that we just are. There's no need to get into that one really. But basically, each one of those planets, or stars in this case, is going to inspire you with different qualities, and that will determine what you're interested in. Right? When a Capricorn sees, let's say, those attributes that are interested in practical reality, right? There's a certain sort of light that sort of turns on inside them. Their innards become luminescent. They're inspired. They love it, right? Where Leo, you praise a Leo, right? Can't get enough of it, right? There's another light. It's about me shining. Anyway, enough of the Leo joke. Basically, why you are not partial to certain things, right, is because you are connected with the soul of angels that are not partial to certain things. If you're connected to Venus, right, hence you'll be either a Libra or a Taurus, you'll be interested in certain things that are peculiar, meaning the attributes that turn you on are the same attributes that turn the soul of Venus on, right? So it's about, let's say, balancing things and stabilizing things, hence Libra and Taurus, right? So likewise it is across the board. Now in the case of Saturn Day, right, fish is recommended. You don't eat on Saturn Day. Now we know from Saturn is a drying planet. And now if you look into the lunar phase, we have recognition of this, I might add. Qamal fil Aqrab, right, we're told not to recite, not to get married when the moon is in Scorpio. Right? Now just a very brief, pardon the graphic nature perhaps of my explanation, but I'll try and keep it as PG-13 as possible. When on the marriage night, what happens basically? Right? People lose their virginity. Right? Now, in the case of a woman, if the man who is copulating with the woman is affected by the moon in Scorpio, right? I might add, Scorpio is the horniest of the planets, right? So it's the horniest of the signs. Let's put it that way. So when you are affected by a moon in that position, you are at your most sexually active, right? And so the aggression that comes with that, the aggressive sexual nature that comes with that, is not conducive to a very harmonious, gentle, and intimate first sexual experience for a woman who's destined to suffer a certain pain anyway, right? So you see there's a wisdom to it. I won't get more into it than that. If you have questions, I'll deal with those on a private, personal basis later. But I think I just touched on enough so you understand that there's a wisdom to this. Why you don't get married on the day? Well, it's not conducive to a very good start to such an intimate relationship. So don't pick the most sexually active sign to get married on. Right? And likewise, across the board, we have recommendations for all the other positions. Right? When the moon is in Leo, do this. When the moon is in Cancer, do that. Is it wise to plant your crops when the moon is in, let's say, Virgo, right? Or would it be better to plant when the moon is in Gemini? Probably not. Gemini is an air sign, right? Whereas the earth signs, right, the feminine signs are much more nurturing and more nourishing when it comes to their effects. So on Saturn Day, Saturn is a drying planet. When the moon is in Saturn, rather when the moon is in Scorpio, Capricorn or Aquarius, that are both ruled by Saturn in various capacities, those are times that it's not recommended to do certain things, right? Fish have a drying nature, they thin the blood. So what you're doing is exacerbating an already a drying effect by eating a drying food on a drying day, right? Because that drying day is ruled by a drying planet with drying effects. Saturn is one of the manifestations of Allah al-Qabid, the contractive, Allah, the one who contracts things. See, when you're inhaling, right, you are expansive, you are Allah al-Basit. When you are exhaling, you are Allah al-Qabid, right? And now, that's why control of the breath can control the emotions. Very effective, this has been proven. That you cannot control your thoughts. When you say sleep, 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 guaranteed you won't sleep, right? But when you change your breath, that is when you can start influencing your emotions. Qabd and bast, meaning contraction and expansion are the key tools necessary to control your emotions from a physical perspective, meaning using physical means. Likewise, And there are certain emotions which are associated with a contractive state that is inspired by Saturn. That's why you tend to see Capricorns can get a bit grumpy sometimes, right? They can get in a condition where they just mumble.
They can always do.
They always do. Not always, but anyway. They can grumble. They can be enough to grumble. And so, basically, this is the contractive thing. This is when, sort of, let's say a Capricorn is experiencing a moon in Capricorn. Right? It's like there's contraction upon contraction. Right? You have nurun ala nur, you can have qabd ala qabd. And it's just like too much contraction there, and they just can't see. You know, in Arabic they refer to the expanded state, right? They say, oh, you know, he has a very expanded visage, he has a very expanded face, meaning, you know, they say his face was very expanded, basit, right? Or he had bastul wajh, right? What he's talking about is an expansive face. When you smile, the face expands. If you could see the soul, if you could see the aura, you'd see the aura expands when you smile. When you are filled with love, which is the net effect, the sum of the parts being all of the attributes of perfection, when you have a refined character, love is generated. That is the net, that is sort of product of a refined character. Love is generated by that energy, right? And the cumulative effect of those attributes ultimately being that love, that is when your aura expands, right? And that is when you, basically what we're talking about is basit, right? You are now a manifestation of Allah al-Basit. One of the best ways to increase your rizq, in fact, is to invoke al-Basit, 72 times after each wajib prayer. It's a very effective way for quickly turning things around when it comes to, you know, financial struggle in your life. And so, when you are, there are certain expansive planets, and there are certain, like a very well-known expansive planet is Jupiter. Where a contractive planet, the opposite, the sort of complementary opposite of that, is Saturn. So, nonetheless, in so many words, what I'm trying to get across is that each and every one of these recommendations is based upon, if you're associating anything with a time of the year or a day of the week, right? Let's say a child conceived on such and such day. What we're talking about is a certain planet, right? Meaning the attributes that are governing any given planet are then sort of the patron of that event. So eating fish on a Saturday, the patron of any food consumed on a Saturday is the soul of Saturn, right? And so you have to eat in a compatible way with that, right? For perfect health.
So you know, you said that fish on Saturdays is not to eat. Wednesdays, I read a riwayah that Wednesdays is good for it and it increases the intellect. What is it about Wednesdays and fish and the intellect?
Wednesdays and fish?
Yeah, Wednesdays is recommended to eat fish on a Wednesday.
Uh-huh.
What's the correlation with that?
Right. Well, Wednesday is associated with Mercury.
Venus Day.
Huh? No, Venus is Friday.
Okay.
But that's why Venus is our day of grooming, right? Friday is the Venus day, and Venus is all about grooming. Wednesday is about Mercury. Now, Mercury governs the rational mind. Not the intuitively rational, but the syllogistically rational. Meaning the rational mind that arrives at conclusions by step sort of formulations. A equals B, B equals C, A equals C, right? So that syllogistic type of approach to knowledge, or our rational capacity, that is affected by, meaning Wednesday is a day where we are prone to affect that faculty in us. Now, fish is very high in EPAs and DHAs, right? Docosahexaenoic acid and I can't remember the word now, but nonetheless, the omega-3s and the omega-6s, right? So any cold water fish are sort of endowed with those particular oils that are increase membrane permeability for oxygen, right? You basically, what you're doing is you are providing the body with the raw materials to make cellular membranes which are more permeable by oxygen. When you do that, you increase the capacity of oxygen to bring alkalinity, a greater state of alkalinity, to not only the interstitial environment, the between the cells environment, also the intracellular environment. When you're doing that, you're increasing the capacity of any given cell in the body. Put your finger on any cell in the body, if it's properly oxygenated, can generate 12 times the amount of output. So a brain cell has to do brain stuff, it will do 12 times better brain stuff. Right? Hair cells have to make hair, healthy hair. They'll generate 12 times better hair. Right? Whatever you're talking about. An alkaline environment will increase the output of whatever you're talking about. So ultimately, when you're ingesting these oils by means of the fish, what you're doing is you are aligning it. Where in the body where will those oils go? Will they go to the kidney? Will they go to the brain? If you are eating those fish oils on a Wednesday, you are directing them to the parts of us, the energies which are concerned with rational faculties that are here. So what you are doing ultimately is increasing the cellular, the membrane permeability of the cells relative to oxygen. So you're increasing the capacity of the brain cells to absorb oxygen, and hence increasing your mental capacities thereby. Is that connection clear?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a question here.
I have a few questions, but I'll just focus on the one right now that
Yeah.
we're talking about. Forgive me, I'm a bit skeptical. Maybe my knowledge is new to this, and I need to have a bit more. I want to gain either more confidence or evidence or information. In regards to the planets, how they affect us and our behaviour. First of all, I am a bit skeptical because when I've come across people who believed in that, the people I met, they were knowledgeable, but when they were putting that much importance on what they're doing and who they're meeting and what their star signs were, I saw a negativity in the way they behaved, not positive, and I didn't feel that was, I didn't feel like I wanted to join in with this, seeing what star sign you are and deciding what to do and whether they should be close to someone or not. I want to know, well, what's the strong evidence for this? Is this what do we have evidence that mums were doing this? They were looking at the stars before deciding, who should we become, who should be, we're going to be close to and who's not, and who, because, it seems to me that people are putting too much importance on when you're born to affect, for example, and things like that.
Okay, so just to make it clear, are you putting the burden, the onus here, the burden of responsibility on astrology because some people have used astrology incorrectly?
No. In regards to her question specifically, in regards to astrology itself, let's take the philosophical concept out of it completely.
Yeah.
Let's go directly to the hadith. Did any of the Imams alayhi salam relate astrology? Maybe
Spousal selection.
not specifically spousal selection, maybe, but yeah, that's one aspect of
Okay,
it.
no, I understand that part of the question.
Did they use the principle of it?
Okay, well, when we have a hadith that says, do not do such and such when the moon is in Scorpio, we have, just that one hadith is sufficient.
But is that a strong hadith, even that in itself? I mean, they've been something in the dark.
We have numerous hadiths about that, not just one strong hadith.
Many sources, many sources.
Exactly, yeah. Numerous, and Allah swears by it.
All the imams, many of the imams have also quoted this.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Spousal selection, now I just want to say, hammers, houses can't be built without hammers, right? And people's brains can be bashed in by hammers. People taking astrology, using it in the wrong way, overdoing things in the wrong direction, that's just a good thing in incapable hands. Good things in bad places, that's what evil's about in this world, really. So, I mean, it's the same thing atheists say too. They say, look how much bloodshed religion has caused. No, it's religion in the hands of the wrong people. So now, no one's advocating here to go read your horoscope. I'm not, personally, don't care for that. All I'm interested in with regards to astrology is that it helps me predict certain sensitivities in people. It helps me predict certain behaviors in people. And in fact, astrology was known as traditional psychology. Ibn Sina, people like this have actually got very many treatises on these matters, where they explain, okay, if you're a Pisces, you've got these sort of inherent physical weaknesses, and these likes, these dislikes, these strengths, these weaknesses, and the best way to go about sort of embracing your recognizing your strengths. It just gives you the capacity to quickly recognize the strengths of yourself and others, and the potential for weakness as well, right? So I see it as something that can only benefit us. But when you take astrology and you use it in a bad way, then yes, you're going to have issues where people are like, I don't want to know this person because they're such and such. I for one know there are certain signs that I am less compatible with. I see the pattern in my life. There's certain people that just don't vibe. There are some signs that are very loyal. As a Leo, as a fixed sign, I tend to be like that. I tend to be consistent in the way I deal with people, and I like that back. There are certain signs that don't readily give me that. I see them one day, and they're all like, "Hi, it's great to see you." The next day, they're just like, "Yeah. So what else is new?" You know. So I don't like those kind of inconsistencies. So it helps me recognize that, and I can modulate it. But it's not a black and white situation. It's about recognizing the greater of the two evil. I give everybody a chance, right? But once I start seeing the signs that, it's just another, sort of a capricious Gemini at the end of the day, right? Then it just falls into that pattern, and I know to predict it, and I can forgive that person for it. So I find that actually improves my akhlaq rather than making me exclusive to those group of people. Now, if you're asking me if the imams advocated the use of astrology for spousal selection, I haven't seen any evidence of that, right? We have certain recommendations to look at akhlaq and to look at other things. And personally, I think any signs can get along. If you're talking about two evolved people, whatever sign they are, they can find a way to get along. And in fact, the signs that are most different from one another can offer each other the most growth. So you oftentimes see the natural pairing of complementary opposites. Cancers with Capricorns, they're natural partnerships, right? Aquarians with Leos, Pisces with Virgos, right? They're just abounding. I mean, I can think of just about 6 or 7 couples off the top of my head that have such a complementary opposite in marriage. So first I'd like to say that, you have astrology being abused by some people, but that certainly isn't a requisite, sort of prerequisite for me that everybody has to use astrology in the right way for me to use it in the right way. And the second, as far as spousal selection and being sort of clannish about it, astrology, well, I'm this and I can't associate with you for being that, we have absolutely no evidence that the imams, insofar as I've researched, absolutely no evidence the imams did that. But yes, we have the recognition of astrological principles in Islam. We function by the lunar calendar, for God's sake, right? It's a very significant thing in our lives.
Does it seem to be to do with people and when they use the hadith in Fatih al-Janan, they're to do with what to do on certain days recommended, but nothing to do with people and because there are the people that I've met that are following these, they're learned people and they're not.
They're one of those, eh?
They're learned, but they're
Just one group.
They're not wise in some way, but yet still I saw in this issue I felt.
That's not astrology's problem, though. That's their problem, right?
Well,
Sure, that's their problem. Like I said, not his problem.
There's always going to be groups of people using.
so if they're like that, what about the other people? How are they going to?
Learned doesn't mean intelligent. Alright. First of all, learned does not mean intelligent. I know loads of walking encyclopedias who don't know how to apply their knowledge in such a way that we would say it is the appropriation of things in the right place to generate the most expedient outcome. So let's first of all distinguish between lots of ilm and lots of aql, right? Because Imam Ali alayhi salam says that al-ilmu ilman, ilm masmu' wa ilm matbu', wa la yanfu al masmu' idha lam yakun al matbu'. Right? There's 2 types of knowledge. There's let's just put it just to water it down and get it across. There's the type you memorize and the type you understand, right? And there's no use to the type you memorize if you don't have the type that understands, right? So learned for me doesn't say a hell of a lot, right? Because anyway, no, I won't put any more qum slams in there today. There's lots where that came from. But ultimately, it's not astrology's problem if some people don't know how to. Some people take their love for Imam Hussein way too far. Some people use it to justify killing certain people. Can't ban Ashura, right? Now, just something fundamental I'd like to get across. When the Prophet when he said to us, "Utlub al-ilm walau bis-sin," was he talking in riddles? Seek knowledge even if you have to go to China, right? Let me just ask you, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite dish? I'm sorry?
Aubergine maybe.
Aubergine. Oh, no, what's your favorite dish? No, like you like
Meal.
jalfrezi or chicken.
Aubergine sauce.
Aubergine sauce. Oh, you're very specific. You're really loyal to that sauce. You must be a Leo. it's aubergines all the way. Okay. All right. So, all right. Okay. You're not a good example then. Okay. My favorite food is lamb curry. All right. Let's say, roast lamb rather. So I didn't get the recipe from the imams for roast lamb. Right. It's something that I very arrogantly went out and took out from a recipe book written by a non-Muslim. Fancy that. And I took that recipe and I cooked the food and I ate it and I enjoyed it. Did I do anything wrong by doing that? No? No? Yes? Okay. Obviously not, right? So, you know, it's not the responsibility of the imams to lay every type of knowledge out there for us, right? When we talk to go to China to seek knowledge, right, or seek knowledge even if you have to go to China, what the imam is essentially saying is, we've given you principles, meaning we've given you certain things that like you can't go past these lines. These are the boundaries of what's useful and what's not useful for you. If astrology can fit into those boundaries, then it can be considered useful. Then if you have to go to China to learn it, and it obviously doesn't come from an imam because we didn't have any Chinese imams, right? Then it's useful to you, go and learn it. Even if you have to travel to China, that involves abandoning your homeland, and it involves moving your family, it means traveling, it means spending, it means going out of your way, not just picking up an astrology book and reading. So I would say that, you know, it's a waste of time or it's something to be abused. We have principles, anything that can improve your akhlaq. When the Prophet said, I was only appointed a prophet in order to ennoble man's character, if you can become more forgiving and more understanding to your fellow human being on account of knowledge of astrology, then there's absolutely nothing to dictate it being called haram. Right? Thank you, brother. So whether the imams did make reference to astrology, the Quran does make reference to the 12 zodiacs, but if that's not enough, that they've actually put an indicator out there, it's important enough God swears by it. What do we swear on when I swear by my mother's soul, or you know, whatever you want, when you really want to get a point across, we pick something very valuable and swear by it, right? Allah does the same, right? So when Allah's swearing by the 12 zodiacs, it's something for us to pay attention to. What's there to benefit from it if it doesn't inspire any type of enhancement in our understanding of something, right? So I think it's unfair to make it astrology's burden to bear when people don't apply it in the right way. Because you can take any type of knowledge whatsoever, and you've got a group of people who don't know what to do with it, right? So it's not relevant whether the imams, you know, used to make references to different people's zodiacs or not. But what is relevant is that it can contribute to the goals that Allah has laid out for you, and that's why it's useful.
Allahu Salawat. Thank you very much, Brother Tahir.
People, they don't go to China anymore. They come to
We import it.
We bring the Chinese here. All the knowledge we bring here.
So what we're going to do, everyone wants to pray.
Let's just do the Jamaat here if you
Open
want.
your fast at some point. Yeah, ladies,